All right, so we're going to the consent agenda. Does anybody have any questions about the consent agenda?
I'm hearing no.
Okay, so then we'll go to B, the employee handbook update plan. Margaret, you're just gonna give us like a brief overview
Yes,
of that, right?
so that is, just an outline of the plan that we have put together to, update the staff, certified staff employee handbook. I talked about this last month, that we have an old handbook, we have a new draft from Neola, we have new Neola policies. And so the handbook needs to be updated to align with the district policies as they are today. And so this is just an outline of the plan that is, that I just put together. We had talked about, what level of review did the committee want? And so I built in 3 reviews of the draft before it goes to the board. There's enough room in there to extend an extra review in there if that were absolutely necessary. The idea is that we get the handbook done and to the board so that we can have it implemented and approved, ready to roll on July 1st of 2026, which would be the start of the new contract year for year-round employees with the school year employees starting the following month. So this builds in a couple of times that I would be bringing a draft back. In between the draft, we would have both central office reviewing the text and cabinet reviewing the text, and then select a team of certified staff members to also review and discuss and revise drafts to provide, a time for questions, a time for input, a time to get any clarifications that need to be made kind of done, and so that when we go live with the handbook, it doesn't result in months of questioning about what is this, where is this change, and things like that. We are working on a draft of a chart that will show, it was in this is a topic, it's in the old handbook here, it tracks to the new handbook here. And then also it references all of the new policies. So we're doing like 2 different types of comparisons, and we'll figure out how to put together a communication plan that answers things from both of those perspectives.
Okay.
So then you could expect that we would have your first review on at the December 8th HR committee meeting. And that is I will send the draft out. I will try to get out at least a week in advance. Employee handbooks to people that aren't necessarily in HR are not the most riveting documents to read. And so I just want to, why are you laughing?
Because they're not.
So I will get that out so that you have enough time to read through, because it is more of a lengthy document. And it's not like the whole policy book, but it's a summarized version of the policy book.
One of those funny but true, Margaret.
Yes, that's why.
I know, I like them.
That's why we were getting, and I was the only one who giggled out loud, only because I saw Julie Shoulders do this first.
I like them. So that would be the plan for the employee handbook. I don't know if you have questions about the timing or.
I think it's obviously an amazing undertaking. The only thing I would say is probably on the bottom of page 1, you want February 16th of 2026 for the second review,
Right.
right?
And that was the review that occurred. in
Yeah,
my
that's
meeting,
fine.
so.
It is interesting. Is there any way, I know if everybody will note at the end of this schedule, it is after the election.
Oh, well, I
Is there
didn't do
any
that
way
with
we
any
could
intention.
figure, I know, there's no, I didn't think that.
How long are
But,
you with us?
Well, 4 of us are only here for sure through April. Or 4 of us that got appointed this
Oh,
summer.
really?
Mhm.
So is there any way we could wrap this up earlier in April without putting a huge drag on you, Margaret, and your team? And, or does anybody care? Maybe I'm,
We would actually have to have it done in basically March then, to go to
Right.
March.
is that just not feasible?
It'd be very tight,
That's,
but
I don't know if that's feasible, that's,
Well, I'm asking if it's something that's important enough to do that, or if we just let it ride like it is.
So, I mean, the policy language, no disrespect intended to whatever happens at that level. But the policy language doesn't change during that time period. And so the handbook is supposed to be a reflection of the policies that would kind of follow regardless of who was on the board until the board decided to change the policies.
Okay,
So I
that's fine.
I do appreciate the commentary in traditionally, or, I mean, in the last 3 or 4 years of the board operations, it's always been the intention of what the current board is working on to wrap them up prior to the new board taking their seat. Simply because, well, I mean.
you guys have been on the conversations.
Well, that's what
Right.
I was saying.
Right, so
I mean,
if you have the new board that comes in, and they're going to vote for something that they haven't been really privy to the entire time. And expect not to have any conflict, about that topic. I mean, it's really kind of a tall order, you know? So I do think it makes sense to try to wrap things up before election time.
I don't know.
so you'd want the actual vote to implement July 1st, 2026 to take place at that March final board meeting essentially is
Well,
what
I
we'd like to shoot for anyway.
To shoot for, so that it is one thing that's wrapped up, you know, who knows
So-
what happens, you know,
so move the board adoption up by 1 month
right?
and then just adjust backwards on the date, on the timeline.
I mean, it can always go both ways, right? You know, I mean, new board might just decide that, yeah, this is not the direction we want to go. We can change that.
I completely agree with what you're saying. And I agree with you.
Thank you.
That should be done before.
Okay, Margaret's
Got it.
making notes there that she's gonna try to get it done before.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julie.
Sure.
Any other questions for the timeline, guys? Are we ready to move on? Okay. Okay, so administrator evaluation process overview, I think Jason's gonna take it away.
I think you skipped
I
one.
think we missed.
Oh,
the
did we miss one?
culturally relevant.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, I did have that open, but Jason's still taking us away with that, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So I always want to start with gratitude, so I appreciate the board's continued support of educator effectiveness. We know how powerful the conversations are. I also want to thank Dr. Burke. He was a great thought partner as we thought about and put this culturally relevant piece together for you tonight. And so just some context, just so we're all on the same page. Last month I joined the team and showed some documents, the process and documents related to certified staff educator effectiveness. And some of those documents that were in there were screenshots from example conferences or example documents within Frontline. And there was a question regarding culturally relevant as related to assessment. And so as we thought about what that meant, put this together for the team, and I'm not ever going to read things to you, but I'll walk you through it. And so the first part there, key principles, really 2 parts there. One is the focus on understanding, not just judgment. And I think there are really 2 parts that are important to me to highlight. One is that finding the underlying reasons for students' performance. So I underline that because we know that assessment, the goal of assessment, is really couple-fold. One is to capture an understanding of the why, like where are folks and why. And then we want to celebrate hard work, but also identify gaps so we can close those gaps. And that's what that bullet really talks about, really focusing on inquiry and feedback to do that. The second bullet really talks about there's been a traditional model of assessment. Many people think about standardized tests as the way we assess. We all know that's not the only way, right? And so that second bullet at the top there really talks about using a variety of assessment tools and methodologies to capture an understanding of where students are and allowing them to demonstrate their growth. Below that, the examples are simply that, examples of ways that culturally relevant assessments are used. And so we know this is not a comprehensive or exhaustive list, but certainly things that we've talked about or thought about. We know that performance-based tasks are one way that we can assess. We know that portfolios are another way. Peer and self-assessment, and then culturally context prompts. And there, I think there's a nice example there where math problem might involve using data from our local community. When I connected with John Schlender around this conversation, he told me a great story that really summed it up for me. And he said that when the WKCE test was coming out, we remember that, right, when it first came around.
Yeah, it was fall testing.
Fall, yes, and there was a writing prompt when it first came out around what's your favorite season
Of the year.
Right? And those tests were collected and shipped, I think, to Florida for an outside vendor to mark up and grade it. And many students in Wisconsin fell below the benchmark because they wrote about deer season. And so that reminds me, right, highlights the fact of what we're talking about.
It's a true story.
It's true. Right, and so that's what when we talk about culturally relevant assessment, that's what we're speaking to. And so there's this feedback there. I committed to getting some feedback, so I won't read things to you, but this is a cut and paste from John Schlender's email, right? Then on the back, there are a cut and paste from some leaders in our district, really speaking to, I think, that very piece is that we're using a variety of assessments connected to standards to really assess students where they're at, where they've been, and identify some gaps so we can close them. Questions?
Personally, I never had much success with peer and self-assessments.
Yeah, I think we've all had some successes and maybe some not so successes in using these different strategies for sure.
So we're saying on the, where the building leaders have weighed in that this is how they are interpreting that for the entirety of their building and encouraging teachers to assess accordingly.
Craig? So even one of the building leaders, it seems like there's less of a focus on culturally relevant assessments. Am I not mistaken? I mean, it's there, but yet we're still utilizing it to evaluate staff.
Well, you have to remember that when we talk about this, right, and we are using the evaluation system, and the evaluation system covers a number of different standards, and within those number of different standards, a number of ways you can get at it. But it also takes those standards and talks about the key that you're working in, right? So your goal. If your goal is to work on assessment, sure, we're gonna have some discussions about the culturally responsive assessment piece, and as to what does that look like in your building? What changes or things are you thinking about doing to have a better assessment schedule or to meet learners as they are? For instance, we've seen this many times through our school career. Like trying to understand what you're trying to assess, and is what you're trying to assess really evaluated. For instance, this comes up a lot with when you have a math assessment that really is very based on like story problem pieces that are put together, right? For a cultural learner that does not read well, are you assessing their ability to do the math within that story problem? Or are you assessing their ability to read the story problem first and then do the math? Because if it's just the math, then help proctor that in a culturally responsive way, which is to have somebody help read that problem to them, and then judge their ability to do the math. Don't judge their ability to do the reading. Those are the kind of conversations we would talk about as they came up in their building, and say, so what are you doing? How would you like to, how can you get better in those practices? Where are some instances you might have seen something that we can think about and improve? And it will improve your practice, and it will improve your teacher's practice because it's improved your practice. Does that make sense?
A little bit, but the definitions that are used on page 1, are the examples that are being used on page 1. I'm trying to wrap my head around, because they awfully do seem a very subjective. You know, it doesn't give you a definitive assessment of where a child is at necessarily.
Yeah, I think the struggle in this piece for everybody, and has been for a long time, right? Certainly, you know, with me, and I will tell you that my background in assessment, I'm steep in it, right? I was on the statewide assessment team, you know, thinking about ways to help, you know, do the value-added research project to help the latest report cards we have, right? Trying to think about each person as an individual when you're applying an assessment that has national or state standards, right, for everybody to come to, and making sure that we are working within assessments, writing assessments or proctoring assessments, or even thinking about what they are looking to get at. That is a whole body of work that is ambiguous, Craig, right? And that's why we try to talk about and get better at it as a practice in our evaluation method, right? Is we're trying to get better as an organization about having meaningful assessment and making sure that what we're getting back from that is actionable data, not only on the individual, but also as a group. That's what this whole thing speaks to, right? That's what we're trying to get at here, is to recognize the individual within a group, but also knowing that assessment is not only for them, but for us as an organization to continue to improve practices for everybody else.
I guess that's the question. Is ambiguous beneficial or moving the needle? I mean, that's what I'm gathering.
No, I think what we're trying to do is take something that is ambiguous and make it less by putting practices in place.
Okay, can I jump in, guys?
Sure, yep.
Okay, so I will say this, I'm the one that brought this question up to Jason, because I was wondering why this language was even on the assessment at all, right? And per John's feedback, the reason the language is even on the assessment is because they're required to have that language on the assessment per DPI,
Yes.
because because the program is a DPI like extension. So they have to have that verbiage and language in there. So if it's only on there because of DPI, and there are building leaders that said, hey, we're not even told to focus on this as far as it goes to assessments.
Like as much.
If the building leaders are saying, yeah, we don't even really, it's not even part of, like, it's on the platform they're assessed in, because there's certain verbiage that needs to be included on that platform for that platform to work with the Department of Public Instruction.
Right.
But I think that the district is not hamstrung to heavily assess based on
And
that
it
standard,
It
correct?
hasn't been our focus.
No, and I don't think any of these things are bad to consider. I just don't know that it makes a lot of sense to, make it a significant part of the evaluation process.
Yeah, I'm just
altogether.
telling you the history and why it shows up on the form.
Okay,
That's what they're trying to get at. They're trying to take something as ambiguous as assessment and all that it brings. And they're trying to have that craft get better. That's why it's showing up on this form as one of the things to evaluate practice over, right? We haven't, there's a lot of other more important work for us in this district, so we haven't focused on it much. And you can see by the principal's discussion points, right, that it's not necessarily, this piece on this form is not top of their mind, for sure.
I suspect one of the reasons, well, first of all, it's the wording that raised the question.
Correct,
Culturally
yes.
relevant, so I suspect that it is, it's ambiguous for everyone. And so when our building people are looking at that, they aren't sure exactly what it meant anyway, so they just basically didn't pay much attention to it. I also, though, based on what you put down for definitions and what Schlender said and some of those other things, I suspect that it's happening, that the word cultural there is I think it's a problem. Because really it's not always a cultural thing, like somebody with a reading problem, to me, that's not a cultural disadvantage unless it's ELL. Okay, then maybe that would be a
What's ELL?
or English language learner, meaning
Oh,
they're
okay, thank you.
not a native
Very
English
good.
speaker.
Okay,
So they have a culture there that.
right.
So, but I suspect that our teachers are already looking for different ways. In fact, I know of some. I know of a student who has a reading problem, and so when this person takes a test in social studies, the test is read. And then the student responds, I don't know if students respond orally or in writing, but I do know that happens. So they're already doing this. I think it's a DPI requirement, it's on the form, I think I'm fine with the explanation and the outworking of it. Craig, I don't think they're doing anything that is specific to this that is significant enough for us to
no,
keep going.
I didn't seem to gather that based on this. I just was confused by, the requirements and the focus on it.
Yeah, well, I think part of it is a phrase that DPI used. It's
Yeah,
not a helpful phrase at all.
I don't think we can get away from it if
Right.
the platform we're using is saying it's required for them to even.
The basis of this is, came out of the late 80s, early 90s, the phrasing culturally responsive assessment, right? And it just has stuck in, but I just want people to understand what they're trying to get at is we're trying to make things relevant in practice so that way when we talk about assessing, we talk about not only what we're really trying to assess, but to also talk about barriers from either and this is where the word cultural comes in, right? A standpoint of Watertown in the bigger world, right? Your family within Watertown, or you as a learner, all of those impact how you're going to show up that day for that assessment. Trying to understand and unpack that so that way we have good assessment practices that lead us to data that come back and are helpful, not only for that individual, but also how we change our systems to be reactive to teaching better is the important part. And that's really all this is about. Right?
And I'm grinning over here and chuckling because I think the deer season story is absolutely on point.
It is.
Totally, completely on point. And it's a great illustrator for, you have to be sensitive to that. When you design an assessment, you hit the key, I think. Are you actually assessing what you think you are? And teachers don't always do that.
Or are you seeing the response in
Right.
the light of where it came from?
Yeah.
And I think a key word is also using varied assessments, right? If we were only and always using portfolios, that would be a conversation, right?
Right.
Or if we were only and always using essays, there would be a conversation. So I think that varied is also important.
So this is down in the weeds, but I mean,
You go there, because as much as I don't like reading those things, you wanna talk assessment, we can geek out for a
Oh,
long
I love
time.
Let's talk blue taxonomy, man.
Sure, I'm all in. But I
Going
do-
back to 403Bs.
Sarah, Margaret? Okay.
I think, I'm fine with.
I'm
letting this
good,
one be
I'm
done.
good with the explanation. Anybody else, questions, concerns? We're ready to move on?
Yep.
All right, now we're on the administrator evaluation process overview.
Take it away, Jason Ball.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Yep, that's the anchor document, so I'll start with that. And then there's a few links that I'll, at the end, okay? And so, the first, much of this is very similar or the same to the anchor document that we talked about last month when we talked about certified staff educator effectiveness. This is certainly focused on administration, but many parts of the why, what, and how are very similar to the same, right? And so, again, I will never read things to you, but the RY there is really, we know that educator effectiveness is in place as a way to improve student outcomes and student learning. That's why it's there. Number two really talks about that the foundation of educator effectiveness is really in that continuous improvement model, right? We want to grow and see growth over time. And that really aligns with our strategic plan when we think about transformation. When we have defined transformation, we have talked about that really being connected to a continuous improvement. And then the last bullet there is really, again, bringing home this idea that whoever this is, in this case, it's administrators, owns the process. They're doing the heavy lifting of doing self-assessments and reflecting on observations that, in this case, a director or a superintendent would be doing. But the person, in this case, is the administrator, is really doing the heavy lifting. When we talk about our what, again, this is exactly what we talked about last month. It's a DPI approved model, right? We know that not only is there here, this is SAPES and COPES, right? We like our acronyms. SAPES is School Administrator, COPES is Central Office. But for every subgroup of certified staff, administrator, central office, and superintendent, there's a model that we follow. It's just a little different based on the role. Number two, under our what really talks about there are certain required elements, and you'll see those elements show up in some of the supporting documents. Really balances, I think what I underlined in the number two is really balances professional growth with accountability, right? There's the human in this story does the heavy lifting, the reflecting, the right self-assessment and writing goals, but there is an accountability to the supervisor and growth over time. And then number three is, again, just bringing home this idea that every subgroup of professional in our district has a little bit of different of a model, but there are commonalities throughout. Our how is really, again, we've partnered with CESA 6 for support and educator effectiveness, John Schlender or Tim, or there's a number of other folks that have helped us with some of the professional development, understanding the model, executing the model, cleaning up the model, and things of that nature, and they've been excellent partners. Continue on, again, we've really worked hard over the last several years to not make this educator effectiveness piece a one and done. We don't talk about it in August and then we'll see it next August, right? There's time that we dedicate in August to recalibrate as an administrative staff. We bring it to cabinet meetings monthly. We talk about it with principals and directors throughout the course of most months. So this is not a one and done piece. It is something that lives each month throughout our district. Again, number three talks about this idea of goal setting and observations and student outcomes all being this self-directed continuous improvement piece. Number four just talks again about John Schlender's excellent work. He, for the last 2 or 3 years, he's joined our admin retreat in August to do that calibrating. I connect with him regularly about where we're at and how we as a group can continue to grow. He's doing some tandem observations with our administrators in November to help them grow in classrooms. And so he's just been an excellent partner and helping us all grow as an administrative group. And then we know that, I think it's really important for me to think about how educator effectiveness fits into other things we talk about, and it does neatly. And we talk about PLCs, those professional learning communities. This is collaborative effort. It isn't just one person talking to another person about what they need to do and grow. It's a collaborative effort. It's based on data, and it's really focused on student learning. And so let me pause there. Any questions about kind of the why, what, how? Again, very similar to what we talked about last month.
Think we're good?
Okay. If you could please, first document link there is principal guiding document. Thank you. And so last month showed us a very similar document for our certified staff. And so this one is really the target audience is for our principals. And so when we think about principal educator effectiveness, there are really 3 district leaders that work with principals. It's Jenny Borst, it's Dr. Burke, and myself, really connecting with principals to navigate this process, right? And so as you see here, this really starts with start of the year meetings, right? SOI, start of the year. And you'll see things like the self-assessment. You'll see things like building goals. And so we really start with that self-assessment and a check-in on goals for their building and goals for themselves. That last bullet under before the meeting says professional practice goal. I remind principals that's really an opportunity for them to think about themselves, right? We're often thinking about all the other folks in our purview, but that's an opportunity to say, well, what do I want to grow personally? And so that's that piece. And so we have a start of the year meeting, Dr. Burke and myself will meet with the principal. Dr. Burke and Jenny will meet with the principal, and we walk through the start of the year conversation. I would say that this is really year 2 of the systematic approach to this.
Okay.
So last year was really our first attempt, not that it wasn't happening, but really systemizing it. Well, that was last year. This year, I think our principals, fair to say that they're much more comfortable with this process. And they're learning, and we're learning together. If you go just down to page 2 there, these are just those check-ins throughout the year. We want, for example, no later than December 15th, we have asked our principals to do a reflection on their building goals. How's it going with their building goals? How do they know? What's the data? And what are they doing next? So that's that kind of goal reflection and observation. Middle of the year, MOI, is very similar to the start of the year. It's a more formal setting where we're sitting down with that principal talking about their goals in math, literacy, and student engagement. How is it going? Again, where's the data? How do they know that's that data? And what are their next steps for the remainder of the school year? The goal reflection is, again, just a self-assessment, a check-in for them, and they submit that. And the end of the year, again, is kind of that comprehensive piece for the year. Really focusing on goal achievement. What we've done last year, for example, is Dr. Burke and I would sit with the principal. I think the same with Jenny and Dr. Burke is having the principal talk through how did the year go? How do you know? We take notes. We share those notes with the principal, and that goes in the front line. And so that's a comprehensive piece to the end of the year where we're really thinking about not only the year that was, but we also start thinking about what's the summer going to hold and what's next year going to look like now. It's June, but what are you thinking about now? And all this gets in the front line. Please.
Question first of all, which is, the first item is not later than October 15th under that agenda. Are we current? With this, with all of our principals?
Yes, all our principals really I hope I've mentioned it before, but our principals work with their leadership teams during the summer and to look at data, comprehensive look at data. And that really, we promote that work leading to school goals being developed. So I think every building principal at school goals by the end of August.
We're actually through most of the first check-ins with most of the principals.
Yes. We also, that was probably more than asked, but we also this year have instituted our third week of cabinet, which is tomorrow. There's just a reflection form that we've developed. We give time for principals just to fill it out in the moment, and then they share with a colleague about how's it going with those goals? How do they know? And it becomes a piece of evidence that they can put in front line, and it also builds that collaboration.
And I just want to follow up, I was in the RMS building meeting with Leanne and Mike last week, and they had their professional practice goal prominently displayed in Leanne's office. And, so that they, it was on a poster board so they could see it, and so it's, and they talked about their building goals, things like that, so I think, and it's evidence that they're taking it seriously and working on it.
It's very good. I think one piece that we continue to, two pieces that I see just across the district, certainly some are doing it better than others, but is collecting fresh data, right? We set a goal in August, and then we don't collect fresh data as a pulse check. So that's something we talked about as a leadership group. And then certainly the second piece is how do we continue to communicate our goals and the progress of those goals to our students, staff, and parents throughout the year. So it's not a set it and forget it model, or we're just reminding folks of those pieces throughout the year.
They were talking about sending out surveys
Yep.
to get the data, fresh data, so I was very impressed.
I have a question or two.
Please.
Okay, so there is no expectation to complete the SLO rating rubric review. So what is the SLO rating rubric review?
Yeah, what that is to be quite honest, we've morphed the SLO to something I think is more rigorous. What I
Okay.
mean by that is, in this context, this means school learning objective. And so I believe across the state, if you were to ask the principal what's their SLO, their school learning objective, most principals would say one goal.
Okay,
We have really increased that to say, we want a goal in math and literacy and student engagement. So really at the end of the day, our building principals are writing 6 goals. Student outcome in math, and then a professional practice. So if we want to say we grow in our students' capacity to do numeracy, well then how will we help our adults to do that, right?
okay,
And then we have one in literacy, 2 really, right? And then 2 in student engagement. So this doesn't apply because of that extra layer of goal setting that we ask principals to do.
okay,
So that's also why in, for instance, mine through the DAPES process, one of the indicators of success that I put, I believe, I put progress made on district and individual building goal sheets in the areas of math, literacy, post-secondary preparation, and core values development. And so that's how those are interrelated with what you're seeing here.
okay, so that's why we don't have them fill out this rating rubric, because we just do it in a way that wouldn't
We're
fit
doing it
into.
differently, and I think in a way that marries to our strategic plan much better.
Okay, and then this says, this is for principal educators, so, right, like the buildings have a principal and an assistant principal, so are the goals of both the principal and the assistant principal generally the same because they are attempting to create the same outcome in the building?
Yeah.
Right.
The only piece that would be different, if you look on that first page under, that category of before meeting with the superintendent, that last bullet is a professional practice goal.
Okay,
That I would expect to be different, right? Because I may want to learn and do some learning around assessment practices as an associate principal. The principal might say, well, I got that covered, right? I want to learn how to, or do some research around better engaging parents in the process of goal setting.
Okay,
So those would be really unique to the individual.
okay, makes sense. Okay, Craig, go ahead.
Back to the, student, I think you said student engagement,
Student learning
student learning.
outcome, SLO.
No, I think he was talking about the.
One of the, you said 3 criteria,
Oh, there's a math goal,
Yeah.
literacy, and student engagement.
student engagement. That example of student engagement, is there what are some of the indicators that are being used for that?
Yeah, I think what excites me is buildings have really grabbed on, there's flexibility for sure, right? But most of our buildings have grabbed on to one or more indicators within the student engagement survey as something that look at longitudinal data. It's a little difficult now because we changed the provider, but they'll look at longitudinal data and pick 1 or 2 questions of that they want to do differently or better, and they'll focus on that.
And they
The high
focus on that
school,
question.
2 years ago, sorry.
No, go ahead. I just said they focus on that question.
Yeah, but there's flexibility, right? 2 years ago, I believe, the high school focused on co-curricular participation. So that was their student engagement. So it does allow for some flexibility in how they define it, but it is most definitely a part of the conversation with their leadership group, and then a cabinet, we all look at it as well.
Okay.
So they use sometimes that, they sometimes also use some of the student routing feedback that we get. Their student leadership teams within their buildings, right? That's where that student engagement piece and those check-ins for data are coming from.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm glad I asked because I would have naturally assumed it had something to do with attendance, you know?
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, that also may be a part or an indicator, right?
Yeah.
I think we've had buildings, I don't think any this year, but in the past have looked at attendance as well.
Sure.
That's where that flexibility really, math and literacy, right?
Right.
But student engagement allows them some flexibility.
Or class participation. Being, that sort of thing.
I know the high school, because I did some work there this summer, part of their student engagement is sitting with, I don't know, some 500 students by the end of the year and asking them, what are they learning? How will they know they learned it in that class? And so that's part of their student engagement, is talking to students about in class, in the moment, what are they learning? How do they know they'll learn it? So again, different buildings have framed that in different ways.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay.
Anybody else questions?
Okay, thank you. If we could go please to, what's the next one called? Director guiding document, please.
Director guiding document.
It's the second one of this list.
Second one. Thank you. And so again, this is now, the last document we looked at was specific to building leaders, principals and associate principals. This is for directors. And so I would say like last year, or I'm sorry, the principal piece, I mentioned that we're kind of in year 2 of the system. I would say this is really year 1.
Okay.
And so what is reflected here is really a reflection of the collaboration between Dr. Burke, John Schlender, and myself. Because I had never, quite honestly, worked to develop a system for directors. And so it was a good learning experience for me. But it's much of the same. Again, I won't read things to you, but very similar to what you saw in the principals. We're asking our directors to do that self-assessment. There are no building goals, like I talked about math, literacy, and student engagement, but we're asking directors to identify an end-of-year goal. And that end-of-year goal is really around students or programming. And so really allows the director to look at their area of influence and craft a goal. My goal this year is around creating data systems. And how do we use data systems to, at the director level, principal level, board level, and classroom teacher level. So that's my program goal. And so asking each director to do that self-assessment and then identify a goal. That's for the start of the year. And then page 2 is, again, there's a progress check where Dr. Burke and the director will sit down and talk about what's the status, what's the evidence, anything that's getting in the way of you achieving your goal and the next step. So it's that progress check. Progress check 2 is a document log, just asking the director to put some evidence or artifacts, is I think a better word, artifacts in the system that support and give a clear picture of their work. And then the end of the year, again, is very similar to the principal. It's how did the year go? How do you know what's the data? What are you thinking about for the summer? And what do you think about next year? But it's a culmination of the year that was. And so again, this is kind of year 1 of this.
To understand how we can use a system of evaluation from the teachers to the principal to the central office to you doing mine, having a system of evaluation working together, follow those goals from the teacher through our strategic plan, the buildings, right, central office, and you guys see evidence of those in the things that I picked for indicators of success. If you look at my indicators of success, you can understand that I had an indicator of success in there around data, right?
Mhm.
That's Jason's goal. An indicator of success around making sure that our curriculum templates for each class, right, are working on. Well, that happens to be Jenny's goal, right? Transparency and communication through budgeting. Sarah's goal areas are working towards those kind of things. So you'll see how like they all ties together through our whole system. And so hopefully you can understand like how we're trying to capitalize on an evaluation system that also drives our school district forward in the different goal areas that we have working together. And they all each also have their own independent, like professional, practice piece that they look at in regard to that piece too.
Could you just give us a quick explanation of what the acronym SAVE is, please?
I'm sorry, Mary.
What SAVE is, it shows up on like progress check 1 under it's the 5th bullet point under the first point.
Save
SAVE.
notify? Is that,
It's SAVE.
yeah, would you be shocked if I told you it's not an acronym, that's just actually save the same one?
I think he doesn't trust us, he doesn't trust us to read it in upper and lower case.
That was a suggestion from John Slaughter, just to be really extra clear for our directors.
Okay.
Because it's new.
I can make something up if you like.
Yeah.
I stand down.
No, but it just goes to show you that like we're in the first year of this with them. Kind of like you guys are with me, and we're muddling through what we're trying to do on that end of it. But again, trying to stitch it all together.
Thank you.
Okay, Craig, go ahead.
So in the DAPES process, we evaluate, there's a scale, right? Of where an individual falls in any particular category. How does that look from this evaluation, these evaluation pieces?
I guess I would point to 2 parts. If you look at the director piece on page 1, there's the first actual bullet says self-assessment and standards and indicators. And so each director, there are standards, 6 maybe, 6 standards with indicators. And what we've asked our directors to do is identify, which is very similar to our certified staff and principals, is to identify in each standard one area of strength and one area of opportunity or growth, and then do some reflecting. And that would be part of that initial conversation with Dr. Burke about, tell me about those areas of strength and areas to grow, and continued conversation throughout the year.
I'm just trying to gather a perspective on, because the DAPES process is kind of like the report card that is used for the administrator, right? And when we're using an evaluative tool like this, how are we capturing
So
that?
I will tell you, it looks like the same. Like, the meeting that we just had, right, for my evaluation, I did the same. Went through each set of standards, right? There were a list of these standards under the first category, right? Picked one I thought was the strength. I picked one that I thought was weakness, right? We talked about those, went through that. So imagine this, like if you were to go into the Dave's and see what it is for me, going into the SAPES and COPES is for the central office, it's gonna have that same look, same feel, same things that we work on.
So for instance, the summative evaluation that
Yes.
we do.
Yeah.
Is very specific on, you know, where the administrator falls.
Correct.
Is there some sort of a summative assessment, a summative assessment of administration?
So if you look at page 3 of the document, thank you. That last box on the top of page 3, right there. Right there, thank you. It talks about this, I'm looking at the director one, I think it's saying him. So we look at the last kind of sentence bullet after meeting. So after meeting with the superintendent about these pieces that are mentioned here, including like how to go with your goals, how to go with your strengths, what are you thinking about those areas of opportunities? Then Dr. Burke would be completing a central office summative report and then kind of closing out.
It's the same, just like you guys would do for me. After we're done having conversations, you guys come together, you discuss a summative report, right? You put in the indicators into the thing, spits out that summative report. I would be doing the same for each of the central office people. And I would also be working in concert with Jenny and Jason on the principles. Similar aspects.
Okay.
Including hitting the save button.
Hitting the save button, save and exit.
Oh boy, I'm glad you didn't have exit on there too.
Other questions?
Anybody?
No.
Okay, I have one question.
Please.
Okay, so you have a number of goals, Jared.
What's that?
You have a number of goals.
Yes.
Why do, like, central administration only have one goal? Is it only one goal because it's new this year, or are we always gonna do one goal? I'm just wondering why you have, like, you can have up to 3 goals in your evaluation. I don't know if that's the same for for central office administration and principals and stuff, I don't know.
Yeah, I would say, much, getting to couple of those things. One, yes, it's new,
Okay,
but much like I have 2 goals for you, but those 2 goals encompass like 6 or 7
Yes.
different things.
yes, I
Right.
agree.
Similar in resolve, which is we have different things, but I also know that working through the curriculum process, Jenny's gonna do a number of things through her goal, right, to move us forward. Same with Jason, same with Margaret, same with Sarah, and same with Sarah, right? They, in their areas, they're much like me. I have a number of indicators with timelines and everything.
Mhm.
That's what they have as well. that they're-
So instead of doing like smaller individual goals, they just have one large.
Overreaching goal.
Yes, okay,
that
okay,
has-
makes sense, okay.
Right, that has context for
Okay.
what they're doing. Because the higher you go up in leadership, and I think Tim said it eloquently, you become less of the doer, which is easier to focus on a SMART goal, and you become more of a leader of the doers. And so you have to take into consideration what all those people are doing and say, in order for me to show you that I'm effective in affecting change, I have to show you that I can help them lead that process of this, which doesn't lend itself to an easy or smart goal. It looks to a lot of evidence based on all of the other indicators that you see happening because of the leadership piece that happened,
Okay,
right?
makes sense.
And so for what that looks like for me, and especially the central office, who are very close, like me, I do the entire organization. They just do their part of the organization, right? But in their part of the organization, they're over all of the principals, all of the buildings, all of the teachers who are, impacting all the students. And that's why we have a more narrow goal, but that goal is not small and more infinite. It's more infinite in that, like, it has all of those branches that work into that piece. And I guess the only way I can explain it is, remember going back to what I wrote in mine, right? And I said, well, I can't just write a goal like this. I'm in charge of all of this, right? And
Yeah.
so I have to have indicators in each of those and bring you evidence in areas so that you can see that yes, we're only talking about one standard area, but in that standard area, it's all of this.
Okay, that
Is
makes sense.
I mean,
No, it
I'm
makes
trying to relate
complete
it to what
sense.
you guys saw in mine.
Yes, it makes complete
Right.
sense, Jared,
Okay.
yes. Okay, I have no more questions. Go ahead, Dan.
I just want to make a comment that all of this stuff takes time. And we have, administrators here at 8 o'clock at night. And Jenny has a model up on her board that says, I can do anything. I just can't do everything. We have to be aware of the time that we're demanding and the data that we want to see. If we're not going to use the data, we really shouldn't demand it because it takes time to produce. So we have to be conscious of, we want this, we want that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So,
Yeah, I say the same thing around the budget usually. I say, we have enough money to do whatever you want. We just don't have enough money to do everything you want,
yeah,
right? So like, what is the one thing you really want us to do with our funding, right? And let's look at that piece. Similar.
okay, any other questions, concerns? Guys? All right, then we'll move on to calendar 27-28 draft options.
Actually, just one.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Jason, I'm so sorry.
There's one more, there's two, but I think we could just expedite
Which one
this
do you
and look at
want?
one. There's a document, number 3 there. Thank you.
Oh, the building
Yeah.
administrator
Yeah,
summary.
sorry. And so, this is really, again, this is new, and so this is a draft and a template, and your feedback is important, but this is what I believe the vision would be for Dr. Burke brings the conversation about building leaders and directors to you in December, I think it is that right?
Yes.
December. So this chart would be populated with information that then Dr. Burke walks you through it. And so, it's by person, by location, years of service. I just thought that was important to note. Those goals, right? So like, you would see the goals from Brad Clark at Webster, and what are those math, literacy, and student engagement goals over? What is his personal professional practice goal? And then the strengths that administrator identified, and one of those areas of growth that administrator identified. The next document is very same, it's just for directors, we separated those two. And so any feedback on this, I think would be.
And this would be the thing that would be the anchor document for our discussion around, our administration. These are the things that I think you guys were looking for to say, hey, where and how do we get updates about how our administration is doing? You evaluate them, Jared, but how do we know, right? This is that anchor document that I'm proposing that we use to steer that conversation.
I should just, so throughout this entire process of these evaluations, when it comes to strengths and areas to grow, I'm assuming that the person doing the evaluating is also saying, well, I'm not sure that that's one of your maybe there's a difference of opinion on what's a strength and what are the areas to grow.
Margaret's like, yep.
I think they'll let us know.
I think they do, okay.
She knows because I already do, but also just like you guys let me know, right? I mean,
Well, yeah, so I just, so, okay.
yes.
Those really are.
We have the candid conversations.
Those conversations are kind of outlined there. SOI started your conversation
Yep.
about the administrator does that before the meeting.
Yep.
And since we talked to her.
I assumed that, but I've learned a long time ago that, you know, assumptions don't always work.
I've heard board members ask to see the evaluations for, administrators and directors. So was it your intention that this is in lieu of that, or?
So I will say this, like, at any point in any time, if you wanna pull up the DAPES, well, for them, it's the COPES or the SAPES, right?
Right.
And you wanna have me have a walkthrough with that entire year of what happened, including up to and what the summative looks like, we can. What I've found in the past is that if I bring you data and we have, a piece of information that's an anchor document that starts the conversation, and I have an open and candid and honest conversation with you, most people will say, I understand exactly where we're at, thank you for that, sure, that's what. But I'm saying that that's not the end. If you want to have that other piece and that other discussion, I just want you to know that I would let the administrator know this is what was asked, right? I would also encourage you to have a review of that with them together, right? So that if there's any questions, you can ask them about the evaluation process, ask them about where that came through and those discussion pieces. Because, if it were me and my evaluation, you guys do that with me, so I don't have to think about what are they gonna think about that. And I, of course, would be there too, because I'm the evaluator, right? But I think that they would have some comfort in that, because otherwise they may not know the why behind or what it is. And it may be for every very good intention just to say, hey, I just wanted to sit down and talk through the process with you a little bit more. But when it comes to an evaluation, people get a little like, why are you, who are not my evaluator, why are you digging into that part? What drives that piece? And so having some discussion with them to calm that, or to be candid and straight with them, I think is an important.
Right,
I would suggest.
But, I mean, that's a delicate balance, I think. And we're trying to establish a process by which that can occur, is what I'm understanding of the board, as far as the direction is concerned. But also knowing that, that the board should be in the loop when it comes to, the renewal process.
Yes, and you have been, like, Craig, I can only speak to Craig and Dan who have been through this before.
Sure.
When it comes to talking about contracts and whether we need to extend them, I do have the candid conversation with the board. What I like about this is now I will actually have an anchor document to start the conversation with.
Right.
Whereas before, we kind of went with whatever person came up with an idea or whatever, and then we talked through that, and we moved from there on as to do whatever we needed to do, right?
Okay, so I guess I'm gonna go on. My understanding was that the board was requesting to see those evaluations prior to our sit down. So if the evaluation and artifacts bring up any questions that a board member might have, they have a whole access to that and not just like a high level spreadsheet showing this. So my understanding was the board was going in the direction that prior to our sit down, we would have access to their evaluation so we can review the artifacts, and we are amply prepared to have a thorough discussion with you about the strengths and weaknesses of the administration in the district and where they are on their goals.
Yeah, if that's the case.
That was
we need
now
to, first of all, I need to make sure I have the direction of the board in that. And if that's the case, then we need to share that differently with the administration, because that is not the takeaway that I had from our conversation. And so I'm glad that if this is where we're going, that's what it is. I thought you wanted an update from me as an evaluator. I didn't know that, like, bring their documents here forward.
I guess I'm not understanding why, I'm having a difficult time understanding why anybody would be uncomfortable with us seeing their performance evaluation, because it is public records requestable by anybody in the community. So I'm just wondering why
It
anybody.
certainly is, but it also may or may not be redactable. It may or may also be subject to like the step I shared with you, having that little level of, reporting out to them about the request and walking through that request with them, right? There are a whole bunch of other legal intricacies that happen when a public record request comes out about that for anybody below me. For me, I'm a publicly appointed official from you. I'm not just an administrator. I am the superintendent. And so mine is like anybody out there in the world who wants it, it's yours. Go for it. And we don't, I don't even really have the same protections as other people. But there are protections that, should it be a public requestable document, that we would go through those steps, right? You as the board aren't public
Right.
requesting, you are in charge of the system. I still think we should have some discussion steps in between there as to, employee discussion or employee rights, and how are we going to make that happen in a way that everybody is understanding and knows what's happening from that. Because the public doesn't determine whether or not they get another contract, but you do.
Right, so all the more reason I think we should see the actual evaluation, Jared.
Okay.
My personal opinion.
Yeah.
Carl,
What kind of file do you have on, you have a file on every person that works for the district?
I have a personal notes file, yes. On each,
Is that,
on each of the administration.
okay,
I do not have one for everybody who works in the district. I may have some personal note file on certain individuals because it was something that was brought to my attention, and something that I heard about as a situation, worked through and had my own notes that I took, if that's what you're talking about.
yes,
Otherwise, the district, Margaret has the files for everybody else.
okay. Now, on your personal files,
Yes,
you feel we should have access to them?
no. They're not public record.
Very good,
They're a work product of me.
all right. That's all I wanna know.
yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that, Jared.
They're not official records, but their evaluation is an official record, their summative evaluation.
I understand.
And so that's why I said, like, yes, you can see that if you want. Let's just go through the steps as to building the why. And you guys will hear me say that about everything that you guys do. I mean, tell me the why so that I can tell the administration why you're going through this level of practice that has not been done. I'm just saying it hasn't been done, right? And for some of them, especially like our central office administrators will say, well, like, how does that look? Because like, this is the first year for me even in this, right? And like, what does that look like for them going to you guys, right? And so it'll be a culture change, and that's why I'm saying what I'm saying. Not because I'm worried about you guys seeing those things or having a deep conversation about where we are as administration or how you feel about how I evaluated them. You guys should get an understanding of how I evaluate people,
Right, so
right? And that's
how
important.
I see this going without having access to the whole evaluation, right? We'll go in, we'll have the discussion, board members will ask questions. You won't have that information readily available because it would be inappropriate for us to think that you could walk in here with a list of information from 23 employees, okay? that's an unrealistic expectation for us to have of you. And you'll have to say, well, I'm gonna have to look into that and get back to you because I don't have their actual review in front of us. And the way to avoid that would be to allow time for the board to review those actual performance reviews. So there could be a full in-depth conversation that will not drag out throughout meetings because we did not have all the information, because you didn't know what we were gonna ask, right? Like,
Yeah, and know this, I'm not disagreeing with you, I'm just saying what you're saying is different. The way we've done it in the past is we've started in December, right? And I've shared this type of information along with other details about performance pieces that, you know, I thought were germane, that you should know about each of the administration, right? And then if there were deeper questions, those were given to me in December. And then I said, I will bring them back in January so that you have all the information you need, should this be a discussion of whether or not to extend a contract or not. And that's how we've done it in the past.
Our why comes from the people that put us here.
I understand that, but
Just that we understand.
that's not the alt stop for everybody. Just, you know, hey, the why is the people. Like, they're gonna wanna know a little bit more about where all of this is going, the plan, the intent, what drives that. And you guys can say, because we're the board. And I will give them the answer, because they are the board, right? But I will tell you that people will respond better to a deeper answer than because we can, and we're the board, right?
I think Tammy just supplied the why. That's what you were trying to do.
Yeah.
Exactly. It shortens our discussions and.
it just makes everything more efficient if we are proactive and we take the time to look at those assessments prior to having the meeting with you and discussing it. So we are primed already with questions or concerns we might have about employees or great things we're seeing in their artifacts. Like, this is amazing that Miss Smith did this. That's kudos to her. Can you give her a high five from the board? Like, if we have a full depth, we can have a more in-depth conversation if we have all that information readily available to us prior to the meeting. In my personal opinion. Go ahead, Craig.
I have no problem saying it. It comes down to accountability. And I mean, that's really what it is. And we're accountable to the public. And we have to make that determination to renew a contract. And we're going to hold a high standard to our administration. That's what I'm hearing. So if we want to have a further discussion at the board for a strategic discussion to see if that's appropriate to move forward, I guess I would entertain a recommendation from the HR committee to move forward with that.
I mean, I honestly, I say that not only for you guys, but it'll be helpful to me to say, listen, this is a directive of the board, right? If you want to have discussions about that or whatever else, right? Or even, you know, seek guidance from those you want to seek guidance from around this new directive, go for it. But it helps to have a directive from you that says, here's what we're doing, right? And that's all I'm asking for, is like, if we're gonna change the practice, let's do that in a way that people understand the practice was marked by a change here. This is what the new practice looks like.
And so then we need a clear directive, recommendation, whatever you want to call it, from the HR committee, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, so we're gonna make a recommendation to add a discussion on this month's agenda about if the board wants to see the actual performance evaluation of administration prior to Jared sitting down with us.
Do we need a motion?
You can.
Sure,
I so move.
I second it.
all right,
You can take a vote.
Take a vote.
let's vote. Okay, sorry, Julaine,
Aye.
Carl,
Aye.
Dan?
Aye.
Tammy, aye.
Was it Dan that you moved or you seconded?
Carl moved, Dan
Carl moved,
second.
Yeah.
Dan seconded, okay.
So on top of that, this information also would help,
Yes,
I think this is a good summary.
right?
yes,
This, anchor document here that we're talking
Mhm.
about is
definitely,
also good. Okay, 'cause I,
definitely.
just again, I'm just trying to serve you. I need to know
Right.
what it is that you want. And the more that you can help me communicate this to those we serve, the better.
Are you looking for feedback? I think.
No, we said
No,
it's
no, I
good.
think we had the
Yeah,
feedback.
we have the
I just wanted to know, that in the discussion piece, right, we will share that this is an anchor document. This document, along with their completed evaluations from last year, will be the documents you review for that discussion piece.
Correct,
That leads to a discussion about continued employment,
correct.
right?
And I'm assuming those would be added to board docs under the administrative content, correct? Not public content?
That's correct.
Okay.
They would probably be executive content.
Okay, perfect.
Not administrative content, because and I even have to double check the executive content piece, because it may be one of the things where I may have to drive around and hand deliver,
Okay,
only because of, I don't want to accidentally have, somebody see somebody else's evaluation because they have access.
okay, that
Executive
makes sense,
content,
yes.
we didn't catch it.
Makes sense.
Right, so it may be one of those things where I just drive around and hand deliver it to you and you're
Okay.
available, right?
Okay.
Which is also fine.
That's sort of CYA.
No, it's best practice in HR, and Margaret was looking at me like,
Well, could we have like a sealed packet that that could be available at the end of a board meeting or something like
I will tell you that the one thing that I was stressing about is the idea of you have these ahead of time to review and give, the stressor wasn't that, I don't care about you having them, right? I care about two things. One is you having them without context, and then like sometimes that's hard. You read something that somebody put together, you don't have the context that is readily available to you. You may come up with a whole bunch more questions that don't make it efficient. It actually makes the meeting less efficient, because I have to go back and chase questions that really weren't, you read into the words or verbiage or whatever else that I had on paper, right? That weren't meant to be read into. That's one worry I have. But the second, and I think most important worry, is how do we do this in a way that protects the security of our individuals? And again, I understand where you guys are coming from. Like, Jared, the same thing could happen if a public person requested it. I understand that, and that has a legal process it goes through. Again, they aren't making employment decisions. You are. I want to make sure that our employees understand that that's all happening in an environment that they understand what's happening to them or around them that might lead to an employment decision. So I want us to try to be as clear as possible about what our intent is, how we're looking to handle things that are personal documents to them, right? Especially when it comes to an employment status, those kinds of things. And I know some people would say, give it up, you're a public employee. I understand that.
Well,
right?
is it possible to have CISA build us into those platforms just for administrator view only, to view it even for the short period of time, like a week prior to the meeting, and then they take us out, so that way you don't need to print anything out. We can only access it when we're authenticated through our device. We can access it digitally, and then we can be moved out of the system until the next year when we need to go through this process again. Is that a feasible possibility? I don't know.
I can only go on historical practice from my now 11 years as a superintendent. In 11 years, I've only ever had a evaluation or employee file reviewed twice by a board. And that was done with the presence of the school district's attorney, right? It was, you came, you had copies of it, they were handed back to the attorney, and so like,
But we're not
I-
asking to see
I-
the employee file, Jared.
but you're asking to look at, in detail, right, their evaluation summative response, right? For, that piece, and that's a big part of what is in their personnel file. And that's why I said, I'm gonna go away with your direction here. And one of the first things that Margaret and I are gonna do tomorrow is to call up our board's attorney and say, this is what the board wants, how can we get there? Like, how can we make sure that we have touched all the bases and we can get to what they want? What do you suggest the practice would be? So that way, when that comes around, and maybe we even have them show up next week to say, here's what you want to do, here's how we suggest that practice move forward. Okay, and so my whole intent is to say, how can I help them get what they're looking for?
I have a suggestion for you, but we can have that conversation offline.
Okay.
All right, that's all I got.
So
Anybody else?
I think Margaret and I understand the intent of what you're looking for. Now we will have to do our administrative things to make sure that we get you what you want to do, but also protect you and protect our employees in that whole exchange that you're looking for.
I think
So
it
that's
is
what we'll do.
altogether appropriate to consider the, from the employee standpoint, the gravity of the board looking at those evaluations, or anyone outside of the evaluator and the person being evaluated. That becomes a document that can make or break a contract. So there's sensitive information on it. I'm not saying we shouldn't look at it, okay? I'm just saying, I do think those have to be handled extremely carefully. I think your concerns are very justified. Things do get taken out of context, and we need to protect the privacy of that information. So any safeguards they can build in to protect that while we have access, I think are appropriate. You know, just thinking about it on a personal level, even if you had a glowing evaluation, do you want everybody to know? You know, I'm just saying from the employee standpoint, this is new to them. Am I making sense? It's new to
No,
them to
that
have
makes
the
sense.
board look at this. And I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying it's new. So Jared has a unique situation, and Margaret, to make sure that they understand that, I guess the only thing is to remove some of the scary part of it. You know, well, why do they want to see it, you know?
I definitely think this should be in a closed session.
Oh, my goodness,
Oh, yeah,
yes, it
absolutely.
definitely will be,
It
Carl.
will be,
Yeah, very good.
it will be, yep.
And if there's any paperwork, it should be handed back immediately.
Yeah, and again, we're gonna let our attorney help dictate how the process works. Like, my goal is to always, like, you guys know, I've never stood in the way of the board asking me to do something. I've always said, here's some things to think about, or here's some other policies and what they already say. But then I always come back to, but then let's see how we can get there. Let's see what we can do. If that's the important thing, let's see how we can get there, right? And that's what we do. That becomes the way we do business, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what I've always operated under, is like, you guys guide me. My job is to give you the things to think about that I think I have to help you think about and help you work through to get to where you want to be. And it might take us some time to get there, and certainly we're going to refine as we go. But that's what I'm trying to do.
I guess in like a multi-level organization, like perhaps a corporation or something like that, I wouldn't think that it would be an unreasonable ask for an elected CEO to say, hey, I would like to review the evaluations of lower management. I think that's pretty commonplace, and, you know, outside of anywhere else other than, you know, the public sector. So I guess there needs to be a level of trust with us too, on the board.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, I didn't say it was a trust issue, Craig. I said it was a culture change issue.
Sure.
That's where I need you and I to work together to help make sure that goes smoothly.
Right.
Because there's, and I've shared this with you guys before, there's the difference between imposition because we can and the something else. And I think what you want is working towards the something else, which is to slowly work in a culture that says, here's why we're doing it, here's the importance of this, and here's why we're taking that job, differently or more seriously, or have a different culture around it than maybe what you've seen in the past. We've been successful at working towards that on many avenues that we've already implemented in the last couple of years, right? We just need to keep going down that route because that route is better than doing it because we can and saying, you don't like it, there's other places that you can work and we will move forward because we can. I'm trying to avoid that piece. We don't do that, right? And in this one, I'm just asking more particulars to say, how can we not do that? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so any more questions, concerns? Margaret, we have it down
I have
for,
it for an action item to add to the October 28th board meeting.
okay,
27.
27, that's right, negotiations.
Yeah. When you said the 28th, I'm like, okay, did we change the date?
okay, so then we'll move on to the calendar, the 27th and the 28th. So there's two draft calendars, the traditional draft calendar and then the holiday to holiday draft calendar. Okay, and then Margaret put a cost per day, so we know how much it costs per day to run the district. Okay?
That was Sarah.
Sarah.
Oh,
put that
Sarah, I'm
together.
sorry.
Yeah.
So the deal is with the holiday to holiday, right? That was the alteration we made to see if it would be cost effective. So initially, it seems like it's gonna be pretty cost effective, okay? But our intention was always to not affect this teacher's pay at all. So if we remove the savings we would get from the wages per day, the savings nowhere near as much as we would have anticipated. The only way we'd get the savings we were looking for is if we actually reduced the wages for the employees, and I don't think that was the intention of the holiday to holiday calendar. Correct, Dan? Right, like you
No,
always
that-
wanted wages to stay the same.
Yes, I understood that there wouldn't be a change.
So I guess you guys might want to take a minute and look at the calendars. I think we said there was like 6 days different or something on the phone when we were talking,
Yeah.
Margaret. Let me see.
It's actually 5 days under the traditional model versus the holiday to holiday. No, I'm sorry. 7 days.
7, okay.
Yeah.
So,
So I do want to share this aspect, right, which I think pokes around in the back of all of your minds a little bit, which is what happens if we have to employ this kind of a model anyway because of budgetary constraints, right? There would actually even be more savings because what I would ask Sarah to do in that document is to do the equivalent of a furlough for all central office or all non-essential employees. What I mean by that is there may be some essential work that has to be done. Payroll needs to be processed no matter what. A summer work crew may need to continue the maintenance pieces that have to be done to be ready for school, not extra maintenance things, right? So we would go through and look at those pieces and furlough or adjust employment if we have to employ this model only because it may be a fiscal option that we might have available to us. So it was good to go through the process anyway. I know that none of us really wanna make an effect or a change, right? That would change employee salary or anything, but it did give us an idea of if we had to employ something, because that's the difference between not having 6 or 7 more days in the calendar versus cutting XYZ program, right? All options are on the table when it comes to how do we get to a budget that makes sense and still is a good product that we can serve people under. So that was a good strategy for us to look at this anyway. So Dan and Tammy, well, actually this committee, wherever it came from, thank you for bringing this idea up as a model, not for the intended purposes of like saving budget, but it does give us an idea of what budget we could save if we wanted to employ this kind of a calendar on a yearly basis versus some other cut that we would make to get to a budget that is workable. I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Sure.
So, for example, on this per day cost, how would food service fit into this?
Well, those would be reduced based on the number of reduced student contact days. So food
Well, I mean,
service
like-
only works when we have, food service employees, paraprofessionals only work when during student contact days.
So are they kind of accounted for under the paraprofessionals?
They're,
The reason that you don't see it in this cost breakdown is I believe that Sarah only wanted to use the Fund 10 costs. And the funding for food services outside of that, right? And it
For
doesn't,
paying our people too?
yeah, that comes out of a different fund.
Okay, thank
And
you.
so, that fund would have some changes, but it wouldn't impact our general operating fund. It would impact the food service fund.
Okay, thanks.
If Sarah's still on, she can speak to that if I'm wrong. But I don't know if she's still on or not.
Okay, so Dan,
Yes,
I have some breakdowns for you, okay? So if we took the employee wages out, right, because we want that to stay the same, not the paraprofessionals, just certified staff, we would have $31,426.88 savings a day, okay? If you
Okay.
multiplied that by 7, that would be $219,988.16 in savings by reducing the school year by 7 days to holiday. But like, there was a question you had asked, and we should ask Margaret. With our current contract, if we did motion to change our calendar to a holiday calendar, would that in some way affect the already signed contract with Right Way Buses, or would they adjust based on our school schedule, or would there be some sort of penalty or something with the contract that we had initially signed with them?
So there would have to be some discussion with them about the calendar, but I don't believe that it would impact the outcome of the daily charge that we put forward.
Okay.
But there would be some discussion about that and any alignment to private school, right? And all of that's outlined in our contract and
scheduling, because this model anticipates a 15-day increase. 15 minutes added to the school.
Oh, okay, yes, okay.
and you had said we are in year 7 of a 10-year contract, correct?
Yeah, it's somewhere near there, 6 or 7.
Okay.
I don't know, I mean, that's fully in Sarah's wheelhouse, Sarah Kelly's wheelhouse, and it's somewhere around there. I know it's this, at a stage where I don't have to think about it right now,
Yeah.
because that that deal was taken a long time ago and we're only in the middle of it-ish.
So there is a process we would need to go through with staff, because we would essentially be changing the nature of the contract that we issue, because our contract specifies 191 days. And so we would need to initiate our staffing plan earlier so that we could get our contracts out earlier, because they would represent a change. People would have the option of saying, this is theoretically, they would have the option of saying, I don't want to sign that contract. You owe me the contract to continue with the 191 days. And then we would have to start a renewal process for any individual, or a non-renewal process for any teacher that individually said, no, I don't want to work those extra 15 minutes a day. I'd rather work the 191 days. But because we're changing it, we would be changing it to, I think it's a 184-day contract. Even without a loss of pay, we need to go through this contract notification. They have the option to decline. We have the option to initiate non-renewal. But there's a lot more ramp up time to get that contracting piece done, because we have deadlines on when we need to notify that we're thinking about, to issue the preliminary notice of non-renewal. So right now, we don't really issue those contracts until April, right after the April board meeting. That would need to move our staffing plan up at least a month or two. And so that's just something I just want to make you aware that that's a procedural thing. I don't anticipate that people would say, no, I'm not going to sign. I kind of think people might like that, but I also I want you all to be aware that we would have to get out on the contracting side of work earlier in the year than we have been historically.
And that only happens with our contracted employees, the teaching.
Our
And
certified staff.
other certified staff. For the rest, they are under a letter of employment that's annual, year to year. And
Right.
we write into that the conditions of employment.
Right.
Okay, Craig, you had a question?
Yeah, I don't know what other savings other districts have experienced with a similar model. It'd be kind of interesting to see what that would look like. In a greater context, but I mean, there is an advantage to saying, we could potentially save $1 million over a 5-year period, by just extending our schedule by 15 minutes a day. I mean, that's significant.
Yeah, well, there was one impact that wouldn't even extend our schedule. It was to take a look at those early release Wednesdays, right? Now, I'm not saying that's a suggestion, I'm just saying like, you could not even change the amount of time in the day, and still we would have another option to get there. We just brought this one forward because we thought that by adding 15 minutes to the day, right, we still got to keep that early release time on the Wednesdays.
Sorry, go ahead, Sharon.
Well, and just in being out in the buildings and chatting with administrators and occasionally with teachers and things, I got the impression that, not about this specifically, but on a couple of other topics, that those early release days were really important to the
Yes.
staff and
That we've gotten that feedback from, yes,
Consistently.
consistently.
And I think especially now that there's some other things that have been added to their, the expectations of what they do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend getting rid of the early release
be
days.
difficult. I just wanted to
Yes.
make sure that everybody knew, like, there were options that we looked at. There's a reason we brought this option forward.
I am surprised, I mean, first of all, I think it's fascinating to see what it costs. And I know this is not the sum total of everything.
It's not the sum total of everything.
Right,
It's
but-
just the fund 10 impact.
Right. But
And
this
it's
is-
that's not, necessarily ESC, it's not,
Right.
central office level administration, right? This is, or even building level administration. This is simply, what you see there.
Well, those are stunning numbers, just for what they are. But I am curious to know why other districts have realized and I'm only basing it on what you've said, Dan,
Right.
but have realized such a much larger impact over that.
I feel like because we do not want to reduce the teacher's pay, we want to keep the pay the same, just lessen. Because if we did reduce the teacher's pay by those 6 days, the district would see
Oh, yeah,
almost
huge.
$1.1 million in savings for 7
Annually.
days.
No, I don't
That would
think,
be
I don't think that's appropriate.
$5.5 million 5 years.
Right, and I'm not saying that we should, I'm saying it's possible that those other districts saw that great savings because they probably said, we're gonna go ahead and get rid of that pay as well and not change the contract to include what they would be losing during those 7 days throughout the 15 minutes.
Or they may have also had much higher transportation costs. So,
I mean, I don't think almost $220,000 is something to turn your nose up
Oh, I
at for
agree.
7 days. And Craig does make a good point that over 5 years, it could be $1 million in savings, and that's just with what we're seeing right here. How much would you guess, really rough estimate, is underestimated in this that's not included, right? If Sarah only did Fund 10, how much would you say that this number would go up? Another 10 or 15% in savings, or is that too high? Yeah.
I would be the wrong person to ask that about right now, because we went through these numbers a week and a half ago. And I did ask the question myself about, well, what about nutrition services? And she said, I didn't use that fund account. I only used Fund 10, right? So then the other question that I would have to ask is, is it Fund 10 or Fund 10 and 27? Because there's obviously certified staff and others in 27, which is our special ed, right? I would have to really just ask her again where the basis came from these and where it is. So I only say that because you're asking me for a percentage. I would need to ask more questions before I.
Yeah, and I understand that, Jared.
So I think if that's a question you want, right, then we would ask Sarah to provide additionally, like, what other funds weren't included, or employees or other structures that we might see some savings on.
I just think that it's really difficult to make an assessment if you don't have the full picture of what savings you would see. That's why I was just looking for like a
Just
rough
know
number.
that, right, in the business office, we always work conservatively, right? So if we give you this number, right, we have taken a conservative approach to that, meaning there may be more savings, but, but there's not gonna be necessarily less savings, right? We don't think, that unless you change the condition, we wanted to make sure that you had a kind of conservative approach to it, so that if you said yes, we at least hit that number, if not better, right, to impact the budget. We do that even when we put the budget together. We say, here's a conservative budget, or here, when we're doing projections, here's conservative projections. We hope that our projections hit better than that, but we're gonna give you a really conservative number, because it would be really terrible to say this is the projections, and then we really miss those, right? And so I know Sarah and her team are very conservative when it comes to that, to let you guys know what those impacts might be.
Tim,
Yes, Dan.
I know we're not the first board to look at the possibility of cutting transportation costs. And I don't know if you talked about that when you were last on the board, but what are our legal responsibilities for picking up, the parameters of all that? Where do you cut off the people who can ride the bus and the people across the street can't?
I think the board has done it right in the years that we've done it. We use the municipal option because we are a small municipality, which limits the the availability of some riders, right? And gets into that piece. There are some other things that we can look into to help support our transportation costs by going through kind of like, a high-risk area, transportation pieces. We got a number of highways as well as railroads that come in, and we can talk about what that looks like, and maybe even get more reimbursement for high-cost transportation for special ed students, differently from the hazardous zone piece. But there's places that we can look at there. But I will say, this district has been very lean in how do we transport and who do we transport. There are some things outside of that we have no control over. For instance, whatever the private school calendars are, we have to transport on those calendars for those schools. And if they're not even all on the same page, it doesn't make a difference. If Maranatha has school on that day, we have to transport them on that day. It doesn't make a difference which day it is, right? If Calvary has school on this day, but nobody else does, we still have to transport those students, right? That doesn't mean our whole fleet of buses goes out, but we still have to account for the transportation payout during that time where the public school is in concession, or maybe even all the rest of the private schools are in concession. But we do try to have conversation to try to be on as similar of a calendar as possible. But I will tell you, there's legislation that has impacted the public schools' ability to follow some of what works really well for the private schools because of our start date. And we have been talking with legislators about like how can we look at exemptions for that piece and some other things. But what I mean by exemptions is exemption to the start date based on the transportation costs because of how much more transportation it is to do outside of that start date, other things. But we do pretty well. We work pretty lean to try to be as conservative on our transportation costs as possible. That being said, I always have ideas on how we can do the next contract differently.
Yeah.
But within this contract, we're doing the best we can.
Well, letting coaches take that van, I mean, that's genius.
Yeah.
So,
Well, like I said, we're trying to find ways within the existing contract, right, to not only do transportation better, but also save costs and do the things that we need to do, right? I'm living within the house that I have, and I will have a new house when that contract is up. We can decide how we want to live in that new house, and then I have other people complain about the house I built for them for however long that house stands. So.
So are we at the point where we're ready to say we need more information before we can decide whether we move this to the full board or not? Is that where we're headed?
Well, what do you think?
Well, I am curious. I get the other fund for nutrition service. I mean, I get the concept of it, but it's still money out of the district. At some level, I don't know if it's federal money that comes in that completely covers all our nutrition services, all the cooks, all the people that work in all the schools, the delivery people and all that, that are stuff. Is that what we're saying, that that's completely covered by federal money?
Well,
It's still considered in our budget, I would say.
Well, I know it, yeah, and that's why I say, so I don't know. If we
I
want to get
agree with
more-
you, Jillian. I'd like to see a totality of savings and not just a piece of the savings the district would see to actually assess if we do want to go to a holiday schedule.
well, if I heard Margaret correctly, there might be some people who would be affected negatively by this and might not agree to the new contract.
Well, no, Margaret said that she had to inform us just to let us know that there could be people that push back and ask to see the board because of a non-renewal, that whole process. But based on what my understanding is, she doesn't see that it's unlikely staff will be upset that we've lessened their work year.
Right.
You know?
I guess
By
that-
Memorial Day.
The only thing might be related to daycare arrangement. So if we have working parents and they have certain pickup times for their kids, I mean, that would, because our extension of the school day would most likely need to be at the end of the day.
I do want to speak though to the people who will have an impact to their budgets, their personal budgets, based on not having employment. Because we said we weren't going to adjust the teacher's salary, but there are certain paras who wouldn't get paid. There are other staff who only get paid when school's in session. They will have an impact, you know, to the loss of 7 days of employment. So I do want you to know, like, that savings comes from somewhere, and the bulk of that is those people who were not thinking about an extension of their current salary to a different model, because we have fewer days, and we don't need them those days,
Right,
right? And that would be an impact, it would be an adverse impact to them.
right. So we're kind of weighing programs versus employees.
Well, I think we need to also, we would need to clarify like the role of the custodians and cleaner, not that, cleaners are part-time for the most part, but full-time custodians, full-time maintenance people, are they, I mean, is our intention then to furlough them? Or, I mean, those are all considered work days, so it would, I mean, we would need to be ready to have an answer for that group as well.
What are our present hours right now?
Well, technically, they're 7:25 to 3:40. It's 7.75 hours per, that's a workday. And it actually, I mean, we have it defined, I haven't really looked at it in the handbook because it's based on the location. If the start time for teachers at the high school is later because they start later, and the middle school is different, and elementary.
Okay, now what would this do? Just add 15 minutes a day, where? Beginning or end?
Probably to the end,
To the end?
with maybe the exception of the high school because they're already going till 3:30. And if we go, I mean, a school day beyond 3:30 would start to infringe on even more on like extracurriculars and athletics and things like that. So we would probably look at needing to start the day earlier at the high school.
Would that affect transportation?
Sarah's got some ideas on how it might not. And it would be moving away from the rodeo and doing something different, but she's got ideas for how we could do it and still not impact extra transportation costs.
To address your question, Carl, according to what is on the sheet here, with the high school in Riverside, the students come at 7:45 to 3:30, so they would be coming at 7:30 in the morning and going through 3:30 in the afternoon. Staff comes at 7:40 and leaves at 3:40, and then elementary is 7:55 to 3 for the students and 7:30 to 3:30 for staff. So it'd be 3:45 for.
So my question that I have is this a model that you want to see more particulars on and go a little bit deeper into the planning process? This was just a very high level, can we see what it looks like, right? And we gave you the high level,
Yeah,
here's what we're seeing. If there's something you like about this, we can bring you more. We can start answering some of those questions that you don't have the complete answers to and whatever else. But we have to understand, is that what you want us to work on? Or are you saying, hey, thanks, that was good enough for now? Or what is it that you want to see moving forward?
I'm gonna make a motion that we consider it.
I'll second that motion.
So you want us to look into this into more detail?
That's what we're talking about.
Oh, no, I didn't,
Well,
no, then I take away I rescind.
well, yeah, that we,
I have enough information.
Perhaps we might want to consider postponement of that until you receive survey results in the late,
I never thought about that.
That's a good point.
Well, we are under time restraints because the calendar needs to be approved before December. So I don't know if we can wait for the survey results.
When's the survey supposed to be in?
November 17th is when they're finished. You'll get the compilation of it the first week of December.
And this, Margaret, December 15th or something you said was the date that the
The-
calendar needed to be approved by?
The HR committee meeting in December is where you will finalize the final draft, and then it goes
To
to
the board
the
as a
board at the end of
resolution
December.
in December.
So I don't know, I guess, why do you think it would be beneficial to wait for the survey results to come in, Craig?
Cause I mean, if one of the deciding factors happens to be whether or not, referendum passes, I mean, are we doing it for, I don't know, it depends on what we plan on doing with the savings.
My personal opinion is we should be fiscally responsible whether or not the referendum passes. So if it would be advantageous for us to shorten the school day so that we can have savings in this area and use that savings someplace else that's more beneficial for the student, we should do that. Regardless if the referendum passes or not, is my personal
No,
view.
and I'm glad
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
talking through that process.
As a student, I welcome it.
Just want you to know, fewer days of education, right? You guys know that time and content is a huge thing when it comes to trying to advance our academics, right? And having fewer days of time and content may be going at an opposite direction to some of the goals that we're looking at to improve academics. Just
For
like,
some reason, I disagree.
I'm just telling you, time and content is a factor that is steep in research.
Well,
I want you to know that.
I'll accept that.
A lot of our private schools go holiday to holiday or thereabouts. Some of them start a little before Labor Day.
Yeah.
But, they go on the hour basis, okay?
Yes.
Like, kind of, and, I think the kids are getting a decent
Yeah.
education there, but, I just wanted to clarify something with you, Dan. You have enough information for you to say we should just continue to consider it at a full board level,
Yes,
right? Seriously.
yeah,
Even without additional details.
that's correct.
I think it would be better to go to a whole board level with it, with a full understanding of the whole savings by taking it off 7 days, right? If we only have the Fund 10 balance, there's other savings the district would see by lessening that by 7 days.
And I'm saying, this is enough for me, whatever. we get results.
So, but I do think you brought up a good point, that there are going to be people who are paid because they're there when the students are there. So then,
It sounds like to me, okay, if I can tell you, it sounds to me like you have you have high interest in having us continue to develop and bring this plan to you in a final look of what it would look like.
Mhm.
So between now and November, I will work with the staff to make sure that you have an outline of staffing plan. You have an in and out of every fund and how it's affected, right? So you guys can make a really good decision based on all of the data at your fingertips. We just want to do a proof of concept for you to have you understand here's what we're looking at. If you like this, we will finalize it, bring it to you in November, and then if you like it, we can take it to December for a vote.
I'm good with that, you guys?
So take it to a November board meeting,
No, on November
HR
here,
committee.
right? Finalize it here, and then take it to December board meeting for people to do, some action on that. I would say that we don't really need to do much more, but I would propose that the backup option be the traditional calendar that you saw, right? And in December, it would probably be a vote between either one of those two. The good thing is at that time, you will have information on the survey by then,
right.
right? So I say go down a planning path of both of those still. But then in December, you'll have the final say in which one you want to pick. And you'll have a lot more information based on the survey at your fingertips at that point in time. You'll have more information about what a holiday-to-holiday calendar really looks like, with the staff impacts that we have, to what extent those staff impacts and who they impact, right, will all be defined for you. And then we can make the best decision available to us at the time in December.
Perfect.
Got it.
Any other questions, input, concerns, guys? Nope, we're moving on to substitute staff survey update.
So this is just a quick informational update. I have a substitute staff survey that is an internal survey that we do, that we've been trying to build up to get some longitudinal data about how subs feel about working here, about our pay, the conditions that they're working in, their preferences, things like that. That survey is currently running and will be closing on October 31st. And I will be bringing the results back to the HR committee on, at November's meeting.
And this is the same survey we've been doing now. I think this is our third year. And the HR committee at the time that we implemented the survey, they are the ones working with Margaret who crafted the survey. So it's gonna be the same questions we've had now for the last, this will be the third year.
Okay, questions, guys? Nope.
Just a comment, that cost per day thing that Sarah worked up was maybe the best thing I've seen in my 20 years on the board.
Yeah.
It seems like 20 years,
20 years? Damn.
but that was really helpful.
Divided by 10.
But, you're on the board.
Okay,
With meetings that continue to last this long, it feels like 20 years.
Some meetings start feeling like that.
Yeah, I know.
okay, so then we have the future meeting planning.
Right, so what I'm showing now for November is, as usual, the consent agenda. We'll bring the calendar back. I don't know if we have administrator contract discussions. I'll have to take a look at the renewal schedule. I usually do give an update on following. Jenny will be doing a summer school update at Ed Services coming up, and so I just usually recap her summary as it relates to staffing. The role of HR committee and summer school staffing is basically to approve through a consent agenda. It's the actual development of the staffing plan and the types of positions all run through Ed Services. But that will be coming up. And then I have the additional action item about the administrator, moving up the board, the employee handbook update. I'll bring an updated plan next month. And I think that's it so far.
Talking to legal with Jared about the,
Administrator,
Yes.
performance evals, and then we will check in with John about the admin benefit concept refinement.
and then you'll try to get that added to the next month's agenda if it's like prepared, or are we trying to get that through October, Margaret, with John, right? The closed meeting session, we're trying to get that through
Through next
this
week's
month,
board.
right?
Next week's board.
Right, like,
I
we're
got the
trying to be
impression-
ambitious, right, or no?
I got the impression he was saying November.
Okay,
I mean, if for some reason we could get it through October and their team decides, because he does
I don't know.
he did the actual work for tonight's presentation, but the formulation of like draft plan documents and things is done by another team member, so I.
Jaren just had mentioned this month's board meeting, so I didn't know if we were still planning on that or if we're waiting till November, because those adjustments
He
were
said-
made in this session.
Yeah, he just said he just needed to check in with the.
Okay.
I think the reason I brought up are we still on track for that, is if you would have said, hey, this looks great, I think they'd have been ready. But we gave them some other things to think about. They're gonna have to do another actuarial table, right? And then set up the verbiage around that piece. That might take a little bit longer, because they may also ask some more clarifying questions at the meeting, and I'll have to be like, okay, yeah, I think this is really wrong with that and so on. But, and if I'm mistaken, I will certainly ask you, Tammy, hey, this is the question I got, what was your take on the committee? So we can make sure that we're going down the right path.
But I think we're all on pretty much the
I
same page.
think so, but I
right?
don't know what they might ask me.
Okay, yep, not a problem.
They might ask me a question.
And I did share that with Margaret, so Margaret has access to.
Yeah.
But I asked John if he had everything he thought he would need, and he indicated that he thought he did.
Okay,
Just to make sure that everybody shared that. And then one other action item, just to remind everybody, the union requested October 28th, and it does look like that's a go for the committee, so we will send out the meeting notice for the October 28th.
right,
Tuesday,
27th.
October 28th.
That's why the October 28th was in.
Right, that's because, no, October 28th is important for HR.
Yep.
For union negotiations, so those will start at 4:45. I don't anticipate that will take more than an hour, hour and a half to
okay.
wrap up our negotiations, and then that's all I had. So action items was just move up the employee handbook, plan by 1 month, take the administrator evaluation process to the board for next Monday's meeting, bring a calendar, holiday to holiday calendar idea development back with more information on the totality of savings, and then we'll also include what other types of considerations we need to make sure we are clear about for if we're going to enact that change. That would be next month at HR.
Okay,
And the sub-staff survey will also be back at November. So November will be another busy month.
all right, if there's not anything else, guys,
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Second,
all right, all in favor, aye?
She can have
Aye.
it.
All right, so we're adjourned at 9:01 PM.
Very good.
Thank you all so much.